Okay, so let's talk about coffee dates. A creator named Ashley with an I recently went viral on TikTok because she came online and said that she refused a coffee date, and the internet lost its mind. But here's the thing, people weren't actually angry about coffee. They were angry about what they believe a woman deserves based on how she looks. Because as soon as a woman says no to something like coffee, the response and discourse immediately turned to, well, you're not pretty enough to demand more. And that right there tells us that this debate is more than just lattes. It's about effort, respect, women's standards, and how social media and dating apps have really changed our dating norms. But before we do, if you're new here, welcome. My name is Tanya and I am a family lawyer and mediator. And on this channel, I like to talk about all things related to relationships, from dating to divorce. If that sounds like something that you like, please make sure that you're subscribed. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and let me know what you think in the comments below. Before we get into the discourse, let's actually watch Ashley's video for a moment.
A man asked me for coffee today after work, and I politely told him no and then brought myself to McAllister's, where I got this croissant, this grilled chicken sandwich, and an entire bowl of broccoli cheddar soup and a Dr. Pepper for under $25. Now, I'm not going to argue with you about how you like to date, just like I don't want you to argue with me about how I like to date. But coffee is never going to be an option for me. And just like I respect your choice to coffee, respect mine to not coffee.
As you can see in the video, Ashley wasn't actually commenting on the man, insulting him, or saying that in general women shouldn't go on coffee dates. She was simply stating that she has a standard that she doesn't like to go on coffee dates and that she would rather take herself out for a meal, which she did and she showed us. And then all she said was, I'll respect your desire to go on a coffee date, but you need to respect mine to not coffee date. And I thought that that was a fairly innocuous statement, but apparently not. Let's start with the obvious. Why is it that some women seem to be so against coffee dates? On the surface, it sounds pretty harmless. Two people catching up, grabbing a coffee, and getting to know each other. But here's the thing. It doesn't signal a lot of effort. In fact, the problem that a lot of women have with coffee dates is that they are very unromantic, they're very low effort, and what it says to them is that this man doesn't really like them very much or hasn't yet decided whether or not he's willing to invest any time and effort. And so as a result, rather than it being a date, it ends up feeling more like a job interview, which is pretty much the unsexiest thing you can imagine. And here's the thing, men have actually confirmed this, because anytime that I do a video on coffee dates on TikTok, dozens upon dozens of men come into my comments and basically tell the truth. And they say exactly that they're not willing to put in any time, money, or effort into a first date with a woman that they don't really know if they like yet. And that's pretty much the signal that women are getting. So in essence, we all agree and we're all saying the same thing. It's just that some women are saying that they don't want to go on those dates because they would prefer to go on a date with a man who has already taken the time to decide whether or not this woman is actually worth dating. And so instead of going on an interview or audition to potentially actually get a real date. But you see, Ashley's video and the response to Ashley's video really touched a nerve that went well beyond coffee, because a lot of the response to the video was that Ashley didn't look a certain way and therefore her standards were unreasonable, or she was in no position to demand more. And unfortunately, a lot of that commentary actually came from women themselves. Several women made response videos to her original video stating that they either didn't even believe that any man would ask Ashley out on any date, that Ashley shouldn't be so picky, and that she should be grateful that a man even paid any attention to her. A lot of the comments under her video expressed a similar sentiment, and this is where I think things got pretty ugly, because it really demonstrated how much we view what a woman deserves in relation to how she looks. And we've all sort of internalized this message that a woman's proximity to our beauty standards correlates with the treatment that she deserves to receive from men and in romantic relationships. And this is a really dangerous and misguided message, because the truth is, all of us want to be in a romantic relationship with somebody who actually views us as attractive, not somebody who is just settling for us or looking at dating us because it's like we're on sale because we don't look a certain way. And I know that men also feel the same way. And why I know this is because I made a video a little while ago about a Reddit post where a woman called her boyfriend husband material, and all the men universally agreed that that was basically an insult that suggested that the woman did not like the way that the man looked, that that man was not physically her type, but that she was settling for him because she thought he would make a good husband, and they all agreed that they found that insulting. So we can all agree that nobody wants to be settled for in a relationship. Therefore, suggesting that a woman like Ashley, because you don't believe that she fits some sort of arbitrary beauty standard, should lower herself to accept whatever breadcrumbs might be tossed her way is frankly pathetic. I believe that this is part of the reason why Ashley's video went so viral, because it flew in the face of everything that we are told that we should believe. But I do not think that the message that we have internalized is healthy, and that we all need to unpack that if we have some type of feeling about a woman like Ashley saying that she will not settle for breadcrumbs, that she deserves to be with someone who views her as worthy of their full attention and their full effort. And regardless of whether or not a coffee date is or is not your preference, I think we should all be able to agree that that should be, at bare minimum, what we all are looking for in a partner. And all of this debate, in my opinion, has really been fueled by the prevalence of online dating and social media. And I have made other videos in the past about why I am so against online dating and why I think people should get off the apps and what you should do instead. And I will link those videos for you if you haven't seen them yet. I'm going to go back to when I was young in the 90s and early 2000s and tell you a little bit about the dating norms back then, specifically ones that I think we could potentially bring back. First of all, watch any sitcom from that era where people are young and dating, and you will see that the standard first date was dinner or maybe a movie or some type of activity like mini golf or bowling. This was pretty much the norm. Nobody was going out to have coffee as a first date. And a lot of that was because people were not meeting online. People were meeting people through friends, at parties, at bars, which may or may not be a good thing, but the point is they were meeting in person. So they already knew that they had a certain level of chemistry and attraction, which made it worth investing the time and going out on a proper date. The other thing that was normalized was when you met somebody in person, let's say at a party or at a bar, you would exchange numbers, or the man would ask for the woman's number, and then you would have at least one, if not a few, phone calls. That's that thing you do when you dial the number and then you speak to somebody on the phone, which I know is a novel thing these days with SMS and text messaging being the norm in the way that we communicate, but that is not a good or effective way of communicating before you decide to go on a date. Instead, try actually having a telephone conversation where you speak. And you have the benefit these days of being able to have video calls. So we didn't even have that. Take advantage of it and use that as a way of first sort of pre-vetting a person before deciding to ask them out on a date, because that's what we would do. And I think that that's a norm that we should bring back. Finally, in terms of the paying thing, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds because I could probably do a whole long form video on who should pay on the first date and why it's normalized, or the convention is that men pay on the first date at minimum and that that's the expectation. But what became normalized, at least when I was dating, and I don't know if there are any sort of elder millennial or Gen X out there who also had this experience, but by then it was normal for both men and women to be working and potentially earning similar amounts of money. So the convention became that what would be expected would be, yes, the man would offer to pay on the first date, potentially even for many dates, but it was only predicated on the idea that the man liked the woman. So if he went on a date with a woman and he didn't feel like it was going well and he didn't want to go on a second date, he would usually signal this by asking to split the bill. And so it became a kind of understood code that when a man asked to split the bill with you, it meant that he really wasn't that into you and he really wasn't wanting to go on any further dates. And as women, we kind of accepted that and we would just pay our share and go our separate ways, and it would not be a big deal. And this is where I think social media has a little bit to answer for, because while I am all about traditional sort of courtship in dating, I personally found that very attractive. I fully understood if a man wasn't that into me and didn't want to pay the date, and I never made a big deal about it. I was always happy to split as long as that man wasn't expecting to ever see me again. And that was fine because that was the understanding. So perhaps that's another norm that we could consider bringing back, because I think that it worked well and it was a good compromise because it allowed men to demonstrate, yes, I really like you and I want to impress you and potentially have another date with you. So I'm going to offer to pay the bill, or to cut their losses and say, look, I am not into this person, so for me it's not worth offering to pay because I really don't want to see them again. And I don't care if that upsets her because, again, I don't really want to date her anymore anyway. And so then they could all ask to split. So they weren't, quote unquote, wasting money on dates that they knew they were not going to continue. But maybe that's just the mediator in me wanting to find common ground. The final thing I want to highlight, and again, I'm going to refer to sort of sitcoms in the 90s and 2000s, is how much effort people put in to meeting people in person, and particularly how much effort men would put in to meeting women. Let's look at a couple of examples. One that I like to refer to is Seinfeld. And I know that the men in that series were problematic for many reasons. And I'm not going to say that I'm going to hold them up as sort of ideal men that we should all be looking for. In fact, I think the fact that they are flawed is why they're a great example, because despite all of their flaws, and no matter what else you can say about them, the one thing you can't say is that they did not put in effort when it came to dating women. Even a character like George Costanza, who was the cheapest amongst them and who was often characterized as being tight with money, would never question paying for a date because that was the expectation, and he always put in the effort because he knew that that was pretty much the only way that he was going to get to date women. And all of them at times go out of their way to try to run into a woman that they liked or find out where she worked or try to get her number. And in doing so, they actually demonstrated to the woman that certain level of effort that, like, I like you enough that I'm willing to go out of my way to try to get your attention. And I think that this is a lost art and something that we probably need to go back to. And again, something that social media has in some ways ruined. And I'm not going to say that universally, because yes, we have highlighted that there is problematic behavior. There have been times, many times, where men have harassed women in public in order to get their attention, and that's different. And I think that we need to kind of come to an understanding that there's a big difference between respectfully approaching a woman to try to engage her in conversation, but then also accepting that she might not be interested in engaging with you and recognizing that and exiting the situation respectfully. And that's a sort of an important skill, and one that has been lost because men just don't want to approach women anymore because they think that any approach is disrespectful, which it isn't. When you can approach politely and then also excuse yourself politely when the woman is not interested, then you're not going to have any trouble. You're only going to have trouble if you refuse to accept that no is a full sentence. And if you refuse to accept that, then I'm sorry, but nobody can help you. And the other example in that whole sort of TV series that I'm going to very briefly highlight is How I Met Your Mother, and specifically Barney, who again is a totally flawed and problematic character. I mean, he's practically a predator. But again, nobody can say that he didn't put in maximum effort to try to get women. I mean, he had an entire playbook with all kinds of ridiculous stunts that he would pull, which I admit are not realistic. But the point is that it was very normal for the expectation to be that men should make some effort to get women's attention. And I think that that's a great example because while he was all kinds of awful in terms of like you would not want to date him or be in a relationship with him, and I think that that became clear through the series, you can still see that he had to go out there and make a real effort to try to, even though he was like only trying to hook up with women, he was only looking for casual, and yet he would still put in maximum effort. And these days, men refuse to do that because they don't have to. They can just go on the apps and swipe and then ask women to have coffee, and that's the basically maximum effort that they're willing to put in today. And that is really the crux of the problem, that the apps and online dating have given all of us this illusion that we don't need to make an effort, that we can just go onto our phones or whatever device, swipe like it's a video game, and not actually try very hard because we don't feel like it's worth our time and our energy and our investment in any way. It's very low stakes, but then at the same time, it becomes very low reward. And this is part of why I think a lot of women are opting out, because they've realized that they end up going on endless amounts of coffee dates. Because remember that men outnumber women on the dating apps like significantly. So women are getting a lot of attention and it's causing a lot of noise. And one of the ways that they've decided to filter out the noise is by not going on these sort of low effort, low stakes dates any longer. Because you can imagine if you're a woman and you get hundreds of matches, who has time to have that many coffee dates? But all of that is just another reason why I think that both men and women should get off the apps and go back to a time where you met people in person. Yes, it required a little bit more effort, but I can promise you that you would gain more social skills because a lot of you, I'm sorry to say, have lost the art of making small talk, having conversations with strangers, and really trying to connect with them and get to know them. And that's a feedback that I've had from a lot of clients who say that when they go on the apps and they try to engage in conversation with someone, it feels like it's very one-sided because they're making an effort to try to get to know them and the other person is just not reciprocating, and it almost feels like they've not been able to practice these social skills. And so they just answer the questions without understanding that it's meant to be a back and forth. Socializing is a skill like any other skill, and you have to go out there and practice it or you will not be good at it. Nobody is just naturally good at it. Or maybe some people are naturally good at it. I don't know, but the point is most of us need to practice. And a lot of you are not getting the practice because you're relying too much on the apps and on social media and not actually getting outside and talking to people. And that's my take on the great coffee date debate and why I think it goes well beyond coffee and is more about what our dating norms are and how they have changed, and specifically how they've probably changed for the worst. But you guys let me know what you think in the comments below because I always love to hear from you. For those who would like to work with me one-on-one or want more information about my professional services, I will leave those details below. And as always, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.